Greetings and welcome to the University of Minnesota Alumni Association's webinar series. My name is John Ruzek and I'm the Senior Director of Alumni Networks here at the U. Thank you to all the alumni and friends who have made time to join us live today. Since the early 90s, our mentor programs have matched more than 16,000 students with alumni or friends of the University of Minnesota. These relationships have provided a learning experience for students outside the classroom and insight to career options after college. Mentor programs are housed and managed within the collegiate units and their alumni societies. In each fall, students and alumni are matched based on applications and career preferences. Today's webinar will feature some timely tips from alumni representing 3 mentor programs across the University of Minnesota, and it's part of a free series being offered by the University of Minnesota Alumni Association. The webinar is being recorded and will be available of a few business days afterwards off of our website as well. We also have some upcoming webinars on some career and professional development topics, becoming a persuasive business storyteller and power principles for creating effective, efficient teams. You can find those at minnesotaalumni.org/webinars. A few housekeeping items before we get started today. You have joined the presentation listening using your computer speaker system by default. If you'd prefer to listen over the telephone, just select telephone in the audio pane of your GoToWebinar panel and dial-in information will be displayed. If you experience audio difficulties while listening via your computer speakers, this can be caused by having multiple software applications open, which may use up your computer's bandwidth and affect network performance. So feel free to close any unnecessary applications, or if you are listening over wireless, sometimes that can affect audio quality as well. Ask a question today. Questions are welcome and you may submit them at any time. You can type in your questions in the questions pane of your GoToWebinar control panel. I'll be monitoring them along the way, so please feel free to submit your questions, ideas, or tips. The whole point of today is to make this a fun and informal conversation about mentoring, and we'd like to hear from you. I am running the deck by myself today, so if I'm not able to type in a response to your question, do know that I am monitoring it and will be looking out for your questions. So first off, we are going to talk with a mentor from the Humphrey School of Public Affairs Mentor Program, Ann Carroll. And as I introduce each mentor today, we're going to have them talk a little bit about their area of study, their career path, their current career, and how long they've been a mentor and why they became a mentor. So Ann, let's kick it off. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, John, and welcome everyone. Thanks to all of you for being mentors. Yes, my name is Ann Carroll. I am a graduate of the Humphrey School of Public Affairs. I have a Master of Planning in Public Affairs. I am currently a public engagement and strategic planning consultant, and I've also taught as an adjunct faculty member at the Humphrey School. John asked me to talk a little bit about the relationship between my academic and my professional career, and as I tell my students and mentees on a regular basis, there is a direct link for me between my academic work and my professional career. So I use and have developed many, many things that I was taught and I teach every day in my professional career. So there's a really bright line for me, and I feel very fortunate about that. I chose to become a mentor because I believe in giving back. So I've been a mentor for about 20 years, I think. I get as much out of these relationships as I hope my mentees do, and I have maintained many of those relationships over a number of years. So it's been very rewarding for me and a great learning opportunity. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you for being here, and we'll get back to you in just a few minutes here. Next up, want to introduce Sarah Kerber. She is alumna from the Carlson School of Management. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, John. Yeah, so as John mentioned, I'm Sarah Kerber. I went to the Carlson School of Management, have a degree in accounting, did a couple minors in HR and psychology because despite being I really enjoy the accounting side of the world. I really like people as well. So I did that and then did the fifth year Masters of Accountancy program before I started working full-time at Donaldson Company. We're a filtration company headquartered out of Bloomington, Minnesota. So I actually started at Donaldson as an intern and worked there throughout college and then started full-time in internal audit before moving to a couple of different analyst roles, and now am doing global projects also in the financial analyst role, but getting to be more global focused, which is for me a really cool opportunity. I've actually only been a mentor for about 3 years. I graduated in 2010, so I haven't had a number of years to try, but I decided to become a mentor because I finally felt like after a couple years after graduation that I could help the Carlson School students. I had enough work experience from the internship side as well as a couple of years of experience now on the full-time employee side that I felt I could contribute, and I really, really enjoy mentoring. So it's been a great first 3 years.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and we'll get back to you in just a minute. And last but not least, we have David Pascoe from the College of Food, Agricultural, and Natural Resource Sciences. David, welcome.
Hey, thanks, John. Welcome to everybody else today. Excuse me. I'm currently a technology scout working for Cargill in the Animal Nutrition Division. My background coming through school was biology and chemistry as a general background undergraduate degree. I did a micro and molecular biology master's, and then I did a nutrition food science PhD degree. These all seem varied, but they have some underlying connectedness within science, and they really provide a good foundation for my current role, which is a technology scout going out and actually looking for new technologies that I can use for my company to help solve customer problems and find solutions for their problems. I've been mentoring for about 5 years now. My interest in mentoring, I've always enjoyed teaching. I've done some teaching in the past before my current job now. And if you're familiar with Strength Finders, I have connectedness and woo as some of my top characteristics. So I enjoy getting people together, hearing what others have to say. I enjoy meeting people, and I especially enjoy learning from them. So mentoring is kind of a good and easy fit for me to work with somebody else and help bring them along and see where we can go on a journey together.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, David. And we're going to open it up now to all three. And as the panel and I were talking before we went live today, we were talking about some of the differences between respective mentor programs. Again, we have formalized mentor programs in about 10 of the collegiate units here at the University of Minnesota. So along with Humphrey, CFANS, the Carlson School, there's also programs in science and engineering, design, public health, just to name a few others. But to get the conversation started today, wanted to just ask each person about their experience, about how their respective collegiate mentor program is set up, and how each collegiate program is set up as far as from the perspective of the mentor, as far as getting involved. And let's start off with Anne as far as her experience with the Humphrey School.
Sure, thanks, John. The Humphrey School has a mentor program is probably 22, 23 years old, and so we've gone through a lot of different versions of reality, a lot of experimenting. A couple of things that I think are really great features right now is that one of them is that the selection process that used to be done by staff and mentors, past mentors or current mentors, now has a much heavier student component. So the students are much more involved in selecting their own mentors. working with the bios and the information that we submit in advance. And I think that's resulted in much closer matches from the student perspective, which is my primary concern. So that's been an evolution that I think has worked really well. There's also, we signed a compact. The student is clearly the prime driver of the relationship with regard to connecting and getting together. So again, I think the incentives and the motivations are quite well aligned, and in my experience have resulted in more successful connections and sort of the working relationship over the course of the mentoring opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Anne. Sarah, talk a little bit about the Carlson School.
Yeah, so ours is a little bit different, definitely some similarities, although, yeah, the selection process is a bit different. I think it's a pretty large program. I don't recall off the top of my head how large, but I do recall it is a pretty large program. So we actually, both the mentors and the mentees, set up a profile online that talks about our interests, our career paths, what we're looking to get out of the experience. And then the Carlson Mentorship Program coordinator sets up matches, and it's amazing how good the matches are. They do a really great job in what I imagine is a really challenging thing to do with so many different pairs and getting them to work out. And then from the relationship and expectation side, the Carlson School provides a set of guidelines for what they encourage that ownership to be, and certainly encourage the student to do it. But in the kickoff event, we spend time just discussing exactly what our expectations are and what the process we want to see is and what our goals are and who's going to own it. So it's not quite as formalized as it sounds like the Humphrey School is, but it is something we talk about, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Yeah. David, talk a little bit about CFANS.
CFANS is very similar to what Sarah had just described. There's definitely guidelines for the mentoring process and what's going to happen, but the overall relationship and how the mentor-mentee move forward is left up to them. Selection process is very similar to what Sarah had mentioned as well. Mentors, students, and staff are involved based on a volunteer basis. For the mentors and the students, and I think it's worked out very well. I think the staff works very hard at trying to come up with some of those final matches. That's the tough ones that are always left over in the end, but I think they've done a good job.
And David, I'm going to stick with you for the segueing into the next question. So we've talked a little bit about expectations or getting connected up with a student mentee. So you as the mentor, you've now been connected with your student. What are some best practices from your experience that you've used as far as maybe setting up expectations or setting up ground rules to help really facilitate a meaningful mentoring experience during the year time frame that you're working with the student on?
Yeah, I think that's an important one, John. A good one to start out with. For me, I think when you meet somebody new, you definitely start off at a professional level. I think what's a good thing, and CFAN's program also recommends it, is to, on that first initial meeting or within the first couple of meetings, set some goals for the year, set some goals on what you want to try to accomplish moving forward. It provides a framework for what you're going to do together. I think it sets some expectations at minimal in a framework of knowing what you're going to be doing in the next few months or the time frame that you set together. And it just makes people more comfortable, I think, and you know what you're going to do. And then if you have those goals, then you kind of understand as well the things you're going to work on and maybe when you're going to meet and how schedules are going to fit to achieve those goals.
And Sarah, any additional thoughts?
Yeah, this is Sarah. I can add a couple of things. One thing that may sound kind of silly to us, but is really important with the students is even just setting up or talking about how frequently are we going to meet. Is this going to be monthly, or what's our frequency? who's going to initiate setting up, and then what is our best method of communication. So will we both be in the Twin Cities? Should we meet on campus? You know, just some of those logistics, getting those out of the way, even in person on your first meeting, I think really makes it a lot easier the rest of the way. It seems like a silly thing, but it just makes it flow more smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
This is Ann. No, I think those are great. I agree with all those. And just a quick follow-up. The Humphrey School Mentor Program is, I just checked, is in its 29th year.
Oh, wow.
And we have 100 pairs this year.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people involved, which is great. As a, you know, it's a relatively small program. What the others have said, I completely agree with. In addition, an interesting nuance that I've discovered over the years is that I no longer assume why we're in the mentor relationship. I make sure to ask because I used to assume that it was sort of about the professional connections, but lots of times students want guidance on things like which classes to take, or how something might relate to something else, how courses might relate to each other, or what I think about particular faculty or course content if I have that knowledge. So I ask the student before we talk about goals to just give me some guidance about why they chose me, what they think I can offer, what they want, and what they have to teach me. So that's always a fun conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Sarah, kind of picking up on what Ann's talking about, what are some other ways that you think a mentor can help either provide some guidance or influence those career questions or those professional development questions that a student mentee might have?
Yeah, great question. So with the Carlson School, there are a lot of services available to the students, whether it's like mock interviews or resume reviews or any number of different like career path help. But I think especially for sophomores or the younger students, those are scary. So something that I think has worked really well in my mentorship relationships has been to help be another resource to do that maybe that first mock interview or that first resume review when the students are really young and don't have a lot on their resume and don't feel real comfortable about going into the career center. So I think just being someone available that isn't quite the Carlson School that can help is, I've found, has been really a beneficial thing for the student, and doing it right away. Also, if it applies or can apply for your relationship, doing it right away helps you get to know the student better and helps them work through being really nervous in front of you and realizing it's okay and you're not someone they're actually interviewing with. So I think that has been something that's really been something I really recommend doing in the first couple of months with your mentee if that's an applicable thing for your relationship.
Mm-hmm. David, any advice in that area from your experience?
I would agree with what they've definitely discussed there. I think just having a good, sound discussion with them and trying to understand, what they want to achieve out of that relationship. And I believe most of the colleges have some of these career development areas that they can work on. And working with somebody such as the mentor, I think is a great way to build the relationship. But if the mentor doesn't feel comfortable, they have those resources they can fall back on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And just a reminder to our online audience, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the questions panel of the GoToWebinar interface, and be happy to field any of the questions our online audience has today too. Ann, you've generously been a mentor for many, many years and worked with a variety of different students. What would you say are maybe common misconceptions that students might have about mentors or just the mentor relationship?
Well, I will say the nature of sort of a longer standing program like this is that I experience very, very little of that. The
Great.
mentees are coached really well about what this is and isn't. One of the things I've heard that has come up in some other programs, however, that bears mention here is students who might be under the misunderstanding that the mentors are there to give them a job or to ensure that they can find a job, which is something that's really important I think should be handled at a program level to make sure that students, before they get into the program, understand that's not the point, and it's actually quite problematic in most cases if that isn't sorted out beforehand.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Sarah or David, any other thoughts in that area?
Yeah, I agree completely with Anne about the that we cannot get them, or like we're not here to get them a job. I think, yeah, that one, it's important that that remains very clear, that that is not the purpose of this relationship. And in fact, we are a very separate resource, a very objective separate resource that will only be here to help them be able to get a job, but not through us.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fun aspect of it, really.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So thinking about that, you know, the student mentee, often alumnus mentor relationship, and a few of you have already mentioned this as far as empowering the mentee to let's say own the relationship or kind of drive that relationship. From your respective experiences, how have you gone about empowering the mentee to really take ownership of the relationship? And I'll throw that one out to David first.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I think trying to make them comfortable in the relationship, which is hard when you don't know somebody, but excuse me, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I go back to setting those goals and expectations in the beginning so they kind of feel comfortable with where the relationship's going, at least in the future, whatever time frames you set. Setting those timelines, as Anne had mentioned, gets them more comfortable. So it empowers them to feel comfortable to not only ask questions, ask things of the mentor, and potentially be able to change things as you move forward. Try to let them know that it's a living document of what you're going to plan to do, and things can definitely be changing, but also let them know it's a shared experience.
Mm-hmm. And Sarah, any additional thoughts?
No, I think that, yes, just a quick one, but not much. I think one of the helpful things is the way the Humphrey program is set up is that some of those basic rules of the road, like the mentee is responsible for driving the schedule, driving the meetings, setting them up, blah, 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 right? Of course, it has to be convenient for the two of us, but the mentee is in charge of pinging me and saying, it's time to get together. And that has been an incredible lifesaver because the mentees have joined this program voluntarily. They know what they want to get out of it, and so they're highly motivated, and the rest of us are, running around like chickens with our heads cut off, so it's great to have that in place. The other thing that has been interesting for me is working with international students who are here locally but who are coming from all over the world and dealing with cross-cultural issues about the notion of a mentoring relationship and how to navigate those waters. It's been a great learning experience for both parties in those cases, and but it required a different mindset in approaching the entire notion, having to start from scratch.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We're actually getting in some nice questions from online participants, so thank you all for submitting some of those. And this question touches on some of the things that we were just talking about. Is one person who's currently a mentor says that I find we get together once, I ask the student to drive the relationship, but never hear from them again. What do you do to keep the student interested in meeting? Is it my job to drive it further, or should I wait for the student to contact me? And I guess I would say from talking with a lot of mentor coordinators that oftentimes it is the student's responsibility, and obviously a mentor can reach out. My piece of advice as far as I've worked with mentor coordinators and listened to them is that if there are kind of larger concerns about a student's unresponsiveness, to definitely whoever your mentor coordinator is in your respective colleges, to let them know, because I think they would also either they can help with that, or might not, or might know a little bit more about maybe why the student's not responding. But I think they also want to make sure that they the students that they are accepting into their mentor programs are engaged in wanting to engage the mentors as well. I don't know if any of our panelists have thoughts as far as if you've even had students who've maybe been unresponsive.
I can answer a little bit about this, or talk a little bit about one of my experiences. And this one, yeah, I've had really great experiences, and then some where like this question came up where, yep, we met once, and then it's been pretty quiet since then. And in this situation, or in that situation, I think the student came in, he'd never been part of the mentorship program, and had the misconception we talked about earlier about my ability to get them a job.
Mm-hmm.
So he was a senior this starting in the year that this happened, and really came in with hopes that I would be able to expand his network and really help him find a job. When talking through our expectations, that wasn't something that the direction we were going to go, and not an appropriate use of it. I think he realized, well, maybe I don't care so much, and ultimately was able to find a job elsewhere really pretty quickly, and then had less incentive. He was ready to coast, or however we want to say it. So that was a pretty significant difference from previous mentorship relationships where we were very, very consistent and very good. So, in those situations where the student isn't really in it to be in it, and doesn't want to really gain a lot from the mentorship relationship, I also think your time is valuable as well. So how far do you try to push it and try to reach out before saying, yep, this one wasn't a successful one, and that's okay, we can try again next year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We have another question that came in from a current mentor, is that she writes that she always sets an agenda before meeting her mentor, but sometimes I don't know what to ask. I have asked about my mentor's career and how they are networking and in related questions in their field, but now she's stuck on what to ask next for future meetings, and kind of feeling stressed out about that. So I'll pose this first to Anne. How do you go about, like, as far as, let's say you've gotten your first meeting out of the way, what are your thoughts about helping this mentor as far as thinking up some other things to address with the student?
So this is a mentor speaking, not a mentee?
Correct, a mentor.
Is that right? Okay. So one of the things that the Humphrey School does, which I think is awesome, is we get a crib sheet. And mentors and mentees get the same crib sheet of suggested topics. And so what I would encourage, John, perhaps you to do, is to make available some of these support documents that the various programs use, because they're quite generic.
Yep.
About things you can ask about. And actually, at one point we had, and I don't know if we still have it, but at one point we had like sort of a session by session set of options that sort of progressed through. It's interesting. I haven't ever had either mentee or me run out of things to talk about. And part of how we manage that is back to what Dave and Sarah and others were saying at the beginning, by setting goals at the beginning and getting clear on why this relationship exists. What are we trying to get out of it? And as we drive into that, that helps. If we need to set some more goals along the way, so we sort of accomplish a bunch of things, then we may need to set some new goals. And that can be the subject of the conversation, because this is always driven by the students. I mean, they're the ones who sign up and they join this, so they obviously want to get something out of it. So in many cases, the burden of why we're there falls on the students and what we can do to help. And then for me, what I can do to how I can learn. So I just ask a ton of questions and just learn everything I can about the student and where they're going, what they're thinking about, and help them explore options, and have a lot of things to cover.
Sarah, David, anything else on that point?
I think that's a great idea that you mentioned. You know, they have this crib sheet of ideas. That's very helpful. I've kind of created similar crib sheets for myself. And sometimes before meeting, I go through some of those and just think about, you know, how do you provide access to something if you're going to meet them? Think about providing access to, opportunities to things, clarify set expectations for unknowns, how you're connecting them, how are you engaging them. All these different ways of just looking down this crib sheet definitely gives you ideas and trying to tease out what it is they're thinking and what they need to know and what they understand and what you can help them provide more clarity and understand even better or interpret better. So I think that's a good suggestion that Ann said.
Mm-hmm. And definitely, if whether it's contacting myself or contacting your collegiate mentor coordinator, I'm pretty sure most programs, even if they haven't officially distributed them to mentors, often have suggestions or crib sheets like we've been talking about. So, and especially anyone online today, you can feel free to reach out to me or your mentor coordinator as far as getting some suggestions. Kind of in, not so much in the same vein, but kind of turning the question around in a sense is one mentor is asking, can any of you share good questions or topics that your mentees have asked you? And maybe I'll frame it in a sense as, have there been any questions or topics that your mentees have asked you that have either pleasantly surprised you or were really good catalysts for furthering the conversation? And I'll direct this to Sarah first.
Yeah, I would say I've had really great mentees that have asked me a lot of questions and really worked to get to know me as like personally as well as professionally. But one area and one thing I recommend to other mentors is to really push your students on tough subjects and encourage them to be brave. That's something where, you know, there's a lot of opportunity to not quite be as brave as you could be in college, and so we focus a lot on taking good risks and challenging ourselves when we have the opportunity to do so. And my mentees have come back and asked me, you know, where are the most important places you're challenging yourself, and where do you take a risk and where are you afraid? And it drives really good conversations, both, you know, on the student level, it's, do I study abroad in this easier country or harder country, or how long do I go, or what about taking this class or trying this new area of study? So it also comes back and reminds me to do the same thing as well.
And
I
David,
think you should bottle that one and sell it. No, that's fantastic framing. I will take notes and send that on to the Humphrey School and make sure we put it in our list of discussion topics. I think that's just exceptional. You're right. We talk about that all the time. but I didn't think of it till just now as a really powerful topic and a bidirectional topic. So great suggestion.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree too. That topic's come up with some of my mentees. I think I've been surprised at that. Some of their behaviors and their challenges and some of the things they are willing to take risks on, yet I think it's just those areas about getting a job and life and what things are outside academic life that they don't know anything about, so they're unsure how they would take risks, but I haven't thought of it in that context, Sarah, so that was good.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think so often, whether in a mentoring relationship or in informational interviews, I think especially after you graduated and you've been in your, whatever industry you are, after a while, I found that you somewhat lose perspective as far as, oh, this is what it's like to be a sophomore in undergrad and not necessarily know um, what you should know, and that's where I think as far as mentors, um, uh, being able to push them on those questions or open their eyes to those things are so important. One other question that just came in, and this is actually from a mentor who's currently in Maine right now, but is doing long distance mentoring. And so I'm not sure if any of you have ever done long distance mentoring as far as with a student, but her question was as far as any suggestions for long distance mentoring. I think probably off the top of my head, the first thing would be is, especially given long distance, being purposeful about scheduling and setting up times and knowing that we're either going to do a phone call or maybe Skype if you're comfortable with that, or I think even a lot of things can be done over instant messenger or email if you have specific questions. But from and because this question didn't come up in the pre-planning, have any of our panelists done long distance mentoring with a mentee?
I have.
Okay, why don't you take this one, Sarah?
Yeah, I have too, but go ahead, Sarah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did it for a half of a school year, so a semester with one of my students who was studying abroad, and we had fortunately been able to meet in person beforehand, but what worked really well for us was Skype. Like, I thought it would be uncomfortable being video chatting, but you know what? If you say, okay, let's have a coffee date, let's meet for coffee, and you pour yourself a cup of coffee, and she pours herself a cup of coffee, and you're just Skyping together, it's really about as close to being across the table from someone having a cup of coffee as you can get. So I think, like, just do the same thing you would do to the best of your ability if you were in person. That made a huge difference. And then also something that I felt worked a little bit better was if you know just a few like good short articles on a topic, to read the articles first and have a discussion topic, maybe for 10 minutes of the upcoming meeting, you've read something short together and can kind of talk about that. That seems to kind of break the ice a little bit to get the conversation started, which can be a little bit tougher when you're not in person, I found.
I think those are fantastic suggestions, and yes, Skype is my best friend in these situations. Related to Sarah's last comment about content, one of the great things about e-conversations like that is that you can very quickly exchange things like content. So if my mentee is out, so I've got a Humphrey School mentee, and I'm a mentor with a different professional association, and it's a ladder in which I'm doing this long distance. So he's out in Portland, and so he might send me a quick snapshot of a course description, or he's also doing some freelance work on the side. So he'll send me a copy of what he's trying to develop in terms of a business card or a way to market his emerging expertise. And so you can do that instant exchange of content that is much harder to do in a face-to-face setting if you're not set up with the e-supports. So it actually can create some opportunities that aren't otherwise available.
That's a great point. Great point. Actually, we've gotten a lot of great questions here coming in from online. Here's another one. And I'll direct this one to David first, but Ann and Sarah definitely chime in too. How can young professionals who may lack the perspective or connections of a more seasoned professional help or best help mentees, especially if the mentee is in a different program than the mentor graduated from? So knowing that sometimes these mentor-mentee relationships can't always match up a specific major or discipline. David, what are your thoughts as far as maybe a perspective that a more recent graduate of the university could give to a current student?
I think this is where networking can really help. You know, people within your own network, or you can ask a friend that's outside within your network that could help them out. Try to connecting people. I think that's one use of networking that maybe get overlooked. So you shouldn't have to do all the mentoring on your own in the sense that you can't provide, you know, the experience potentially for a mentee in all situations. And so not only expanding their network, but introducing them to people that can help you provide them some experience. I think it also gives an opportunity for the young mentee, or it could be an older mentee, to go into a new area and ask somebody some information that's outside the mentor's area because they have this unique connection with the mentee in a situation where they're matched up differently. Go outside their network and you know, find somebody that neither the mentor or the mentee knows and ask some questions. Try to get them to connect. I think it's good to go meet new people, and it never hurts to ask. All they can say is no, but I think what I found is most people welcome people to come in and ask questions and get to know each other.
Great point.
Maybe I'll share some thoughts on this one too. So I think about as I'm a young professional still, and like two of my mentees haven't been in accounting or finance. So I think some areas where I've really focused on are some of just the real, just kind of base business skills. So thinking about being business professional, what does that mean? How do meetings run? How about presentations or communication skills? How long should you, or what are the best forms of communication? Thinking about interning or starting a new career, how long should you work on a project or work and try to figure things out before you ask questions? How frequently should we ask questions? Just sort of those basics that don't really matter what role you're in. I even think about my dad, who I think is an excellent mentor. And we are in very different fields, but a lot of what he's mentored me on and taught me is these management skills that cross many different fields, and I think are really important, and it really doesn't matter that your mentee isn't in the same field.
This is Ann. Just a quick comment. I would agree with everything they said, and I think whether you've just started with this or whether you've been doing this for decades, I think it's still so much about just asking good questions and teaching others how to ask good questions. So if you've even just a few years, like with Sarah, into the workplace, you know much more in a much more near-term fashion how you thought about proceeding and how you are thinking about proceeding with your career. And so it's not so much about answers as it is about helping mentees think through the questions.
David, I'm just going to ask you a quick question. It's one that came in online, and if you don't know the answer, I'm going to follow up with the mentor coordinator from CFANS. We have one CFANS alumna was asking is there a monthly interaction that is required between the mentor and mentee? Is that ringing any bells, or not from your experience?
Yep, it's part of the guidelines. They would hope that you at least meet one time a month, so it is a guideline, so you can take that as you will.
Yeah, and would that be in person or virtual or that's one of the specific questions of this thread is would email be considered an interaction? And I'm just not as familiar with the minutia of the CFANS program.
Yeah, that probably gets a little more gray. I just speaking with some of the staff there and the Alumni Association, I think they'd want it to be more than an email, but
okay,
we could probably ask about that one. But I would think it would be more of a Skype or a personal interaction.
Sure, sure. Sarah, we were talking about this question earlier, and I'll direct it to you to kickstart this question. But knowing that each mentor relationship is different, some may just run the span of that year and be done, and that's perfectly okay. And then there's some mentoring relationships that continue on beyond that formal period. So let's say using the scenario where if both parties are agreeable, how have you continued kind of these mentoring relationships even after the program is done with your mentee?
Yeah, this one is really important to me. It was actually my first mentee, and I could not have been better matched with her. And it was definitely a mutual feeling. So when we had worked through the first year program, we both thought, yeah, this doesn't feel like we should just say, okay, bye. One thing that had really been beneficial to us is that we got to know each other both professionally, but also talked a lot about our personal lives. And I think, especially in the business world, that's an area where we forget or we don't talk about as much. But we are human beings, and there's a part of our life that is outside of the business world. And I think we connected on that level as well. So when our year was up, we worked with the Carlson School to be matched again the next year, and during the summer continued to meet monthly, and even still today, we're no longer official matches through the Carlson program, but we're mentoring and continuing our relationship very much so today. And you know, she reaches out to me all the time on different job opportunities or different projects and different things, and I reach out to her as well, and it's been really great, and someone that I'm confident I will keep in touch with for many years to come, and it's exciting to watch her grow up some more. And then I've had others that, yeah, we have accomplished our goals, and we don't really have a need to keep going beyond it, and so we let the year run its course, and that's equally okay.
Exactly. Yep. And from your perspective, having mentored for many years, what's kind of the as you look back on all the different folks that you've mentored, how have those relationships changed over time if you've kept in touch with any of those folks?
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, it's fun. I hire a lot of them over time as I'm not an employer in the sense that some of the rest of you are, where I can hire people full time, but I hire them when they're grad students and sometimes shortly after they graduate to do freelance work for me on an hourly basis because I know they're really smart and well trained by the Humphrey School. So, but I've stayed in touch with a number of them for 5, 6, 7 years sometimes, just because they're really interesting people, and we don't at Humphrey we don't repeat, that it's never a formal relationship. But I just was on the phone this morning with a former mentee who's now working for a state agency, and I needed to get some information from her about some work she'd done for her previous job and blah, blah, blah. And it's great having that connection. We get together for lunch or for whatever on a periodic basis with a number of them. So right now I'm running 2 official mentors or mentees, but I also have active relationships with probably 3 more in various different ways. So they become part of my professional network, and I become part of theirs, and it's cool. It's a ton of fun.
Oh, that's wonderful. And the last question I'm going to throw out to the the panel is, and this doesn't even have to be in the context of a formal mentoring program at the U, but how do you professionally go about finding professional mentoring or advice from colleagues in your day-to-day work? How have you gone about building those relationships as far as when you're seeking advice from others? And so I guess I'm just trying to glean some advice that you've experienced along the way in your professional networks. And I'll throw that out to David first.
That's a good one. I think it's hard to develop your career on an island. You got to be connected. So I think there's going to be people in and out of your life, career as well as personally, that challenge the way you think, or just, you know, maybe not outright, but make you think about things. And you may be getting mentored and you don't even know it. There's many different ways to think about mentoring. You know, just being in certain teams, you're going to learn from people. That can be a form of mentoring as well. But I point out to people that they would be great mentors if they really considered it and thought about how they present things. And some people are naturally good at it. So those are usually the people I pointed out to. And of course, I try to recruit for U of M.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for doing that. Thank you. Sarah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, professionally, I would say so Donaldson has a really great mentorship program, which I'm very fortunate to be a part of. So I definitely have a mentorship relationship at work, which I use all the time. But I also think about in college having a really great professor who pushed me really hard, and I look to him as a mentor most certainly. And then also just as I've changed, I've had a number of different roles already within Donaldson. Looking back at those supervisors I've had at the beginning, and most certainly reaching out to them and using them as mentors as they do for me as well. So I think they come in a number of different types of people or different roles. As David mentioned, they're different aspects of your life can provide good people, and yeah, I think you just see where your relationships go, and the ones that are important, make sure you're maintaining them.
Mm-hmm. And Anne, anything else to add, or any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, just really briefly. I think it's much harder for me as a sole proprietor because I don't have that built-in network of colleagues, but I mentor with when I partner with other people doing projects, and I mean I get mentored, and I also learn a lot from my client relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Because these are very when you're doing public engagement and strategic planning, it's a very very participatory, interactive process, so there's a lot of learning that goes on that way, as well as staying involved with professional associations and learning a lot through those association, you know, webinars and literature and conferences and so on.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Anne, Sarah, David. This was a really great conversation. Thank you to the folks online as well for the questions. And But this is where I'll leave Anne, David, and Sarah. So thank you so much for being part of this panel today.
Absolutely.
Thank you for doing this. Good luck to everybody who's a mentor.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you all. And that concludes the panel portion of the webinar. Thanks again to our alumni who participated today, and also to the Humphrey School, the Carlson School, and the College of Food, Agricultural, and Natural Resource Sciences for suggesting these great mentors to talk about their experiences. If you're on social media, be sure to connect with our Alumni Association on Twitter, LinkedIn, and our other channels that you can find off of our website, minnesotaalumni.org. And in closing, just want to thank you all for being here today, and thank you to the members of the University of Minnesota Alumni Association who make initiatives like this possible. Thank you. Because of our members, we can help colleges enrich the lives of alumni, support student success, and make a better University of Minnesota. And so if you're interested in becoming a member, you can learn more at minnesotaalumni.org/join. And that's the conclusion of today's conversation. Thank you again for joining us and being an active member of the worldwide community of University of Minnesota alumni and friends. Have a great day.